everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. And it is amazing to see Golan Ramraz is still alive after his spider bite by a black widow spider. That is absolutely insane. And reason for me to never visit Barcelona. So I'm glad you're alive.
And to be clear, a Mediterranean black widow spider. So it's the black widow spider with the string bikini, basically.
Let me ask you, I got to ask you an honest question. I'm sorry, just for a follow-up. Are you sure there aren't any others?
Any other black widows?
Yeah, like, do
you notice my background? I am no longer in the country. I'm back in the middle of the city of Barcelona, and I may never go into a grassy area again.
There you go. There you go. There's the answer.
And Men, the dude Stern, of course, looking amazing with his brand new haircut. And go to YouTube for that. Follow us on YouTube at the Daily Cheat Sheet, and you could look at Men's brilliant haircut. I have to start by saying this, Golan, and yesterday you and I were going back and forth with the titling of the show and a lot of that. And I didn't sleep well last night because I didn't follow my heart of what I want this show to be and what I wanted the title to be. One of the things I'm known for that people appreciate is that I go against the grain, even if it's not popular. I didn't sleep well at all because of that. So when I said that was my stupidity before in a chat, that's really what I was referring to. I was not happy that I was unwilling to go against the grain and be not liked, because
I got to tell the people what this means. Okay. And I'll do this very briefly because it's not a news story, but it is a personal story, which is, first of all, Judah, very self-critical, needs to stop doing that. He's a wonderful human being and deserves to be celebrated as such. But yesterday, he wanted to point out that on our show, we don't just do the hot clickbait news story of the day that's going to get us eyeballs. We want to do something substantive. And so we didn't spend an hour just talking about Jeffrey Epstein and conspiracy theories. We talked about it through the prism of White House messaging. We talked about it through the prism of let's move on from it. But we didn't do what most, and I hate to say it, but most podcasters out there did, which is, this is going to be a hot topic. Let's go ahead and just wring it through like an old towel until every drop is wrung from it. And that's what he wanted to talk about was, hey, we didn't spend an hour doing Jeffrey Epstein. We talked about this, and this, all substantive things. If you're looking for that, come to us. And then he second guessed it. I think people are going to think I'm being condescending. People are going to think I'm alienating them or whatever. And my opinion was the people who listen to us know this is how we do it. They know that we are going to speak about important topics. We're going to talk about them in ways that other people aren't talking about them. And that's why they come here. They don't want the rumor. They want the truth. And he vetoed himself and then put up a different post. I will admit yesterday's numbers were a little lower than usual.
Still the number one rated show.
That's right. Number one
rated.
Listen, we're
not
in the
only
top
in the world,
250.
intergalactically.
Top rated.
Let's give ourselves credit for being around for 40 days to be in the top 250 or top 200, some places top 100 in different markets. We should be very proud of ourselves, okay?
We should. And I think the reason why the numbers were low was, was not because of any tweet or any title or anything else. I think it's the summer. I think it's hot outside. I think people want to listen to this shit less. So, okay, great. But you know what? I'm glad you brought it up, because I think this might be the beginning of your journey down the yellow brick road of self-actualization.
Men, to the bigger point, it's going against the grain. As you all meant, it's not very easy sometimes. You want to just feed in. And listen, I think there are a lot of charlatans out there. And I'll put Benny Johnson, I'll put Alex Jones. How anybody could listen to Alex Jones. These people are happier with the fact that Pam Bondi didn't put out a list than if she had put out a list, because they're getting way more viewers and listeners because of that fact. I'm still going to say the White House did a terrible messaging job, but that's all that is a terrible messaging job, man.
Like we said, yes, there are a lot of, we'll call them influencers that are having a field day with this because it's red meat and people just love jumping all over it. But the most likely answer is that Epstein was a CIA asset, and the content that he collected in that role from those people, all the blackmail videos, is CIA assets. They own the content and they can't give it up for national security reasons, and they're not going to. So the guys out there, the Alex Joneses, I mean, Alex Jones has been doing this. Here's the crazy thing with Alex Jones is that Every once in a while, he gets it right. But for the vast majority of the time, he is off in la la land. I mean, that guy is just,
It's putting it mildly. You're being very kind.
and he hurt a lot of people with his rhetoric about those kids that were killed in that school shooting.
In Sandy Hook, yeah, it was terrible.
He said it was all fake. I mean, that was just, I can't imagine what it was like for a parent going through that where your child was murdered, and then you have this lunatic with a giant microphone saying it's all fake, staged, and whatever.
Yeah, but I have a theory. My theory is people don't listen to Alex Jones. They spectate Alex Jones. It's like watching a public meltdown in a Walmart parking lot or something like that, or looking at a YouTube video called Chainsaw Juggling Fail or something. You're not there to learn. You're there to gawk. You're there to, you can't wait to see the car crash, like how people sometimes watch NASCAR. I think it's like rubbernecking in podcast form. Yeah, do you remember that there's that athlete, Eddie the Eagle? They made a movie out of him.
And it was ski jumper from Britain.
The
from
ski
England.
jumper.
Just so Mend understands, England, I don't believe, ever was involved in the ski jumping ever before. And I want to say it was maybe the 96 Olympics, the 92 Olympics, that Eddie the Eagle Edwards was there. He was like the Jamaican bobsled team, only worse for the UK. And boy, was he bad.
And Alex Jones, to me, is the Eddie the Eagle of conspiracy theorists. It's not because he's brave or underdog worthy. It's because he keeps launching himself off rhetorical ski jump lifts with no regard for reality, for physics, for human decency, for self-preservation. You don't tune in hoping he's going to land. You tune in knowing he's not going to land. For me, that's my theory anyway. That's the draw.
You see, you're saying that because you have to pray that's your theory. Because otherwise, you're thinking to yourself, holy cow, there are a lot of people that are listening to him. And I just want to end this because with Men's point. Men brings up a point. It could be a valid point of why they don't release the information goal. And no matter what they did or would have said, it never would have been enough. And that's just the reality of the situation. Final thoughts on this, because I really want to move on.
Pam Bondi saying that the file was on my desk. Even that is semi-believable. She had the file. But the one thing that's undeniable is that there are logs, flight logs, immigration logs, all of that stuff, and they know who went. So to say that we don't have anything is disingenuous. It's utterly bullshit. But at the same time, to say that we have the exact thing of who the pedophiles were or whatever, I mean, they have information that they could release that they're not releasing, and that is the bottom line.
And you know what? Again, what I said, even if they released that, it wouldn't be enough. It would cause a worse firestorm. Listen, it's a never-ending loophole.
Musk had one good take on it. He goes, if there is no list, then what is Ghislaine Maxwell doing in prison? What is she in prison for? There's a whole bunch of victims. There's a person in jail, and we don't know who the perpetrators were. It's as simple as that.
Here we are. We didn't want to discuss Jeffrey Epstein, and we're discussing Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I just look at him as like the Netflix Tiger King. Okay, let's move on, though, because there are a lot of things going on. But my whole point, Golan, again, was I really want people to go with your belief system and not change your belief systems out of fear of being. That's the whole reason I became a conservative. But your favorite thing that we have glossed over, we'll go through it very quickly, is that because you have extremely terrible and smelly feet, and you are extremely happy now that they took the shoe ban off at the airport. So go on. Thank you.
Let me tell you, first of all, my feet are perfect. And that has been verified by multiple women throughout my life. And my son has my feet. And my wife likes to say, I wish I could make fun of your feet, but your feet are perfect. And so are your son's. So no, Judah, they don't smell. They're lovely. But I travel a lot. And because I travel a lot, it has been the bane of my existence that one, I think, Islamist convert decided to put a match into his toe box, and suddenly we all had to take our shoes off for 20 years. Dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And my problem isn't me. I don't mind. I got it pretty quickly. I went out and bought myself a pair of boots with a zipper on the side, and then I bought myself a pair of flip-flops. And I'm the guy who, you don't even realize what's going on. I'm already through security. Bye. It's all the people in front of me who didn't understand for 20 years that they had to take their shoes off, and they've double and triple knotted their shoes, and now it takes them 20 minutes to figure out how to untie them and then put them back on while they're standing in the middle of the. I can't even get into it. It's a nightmare for me. So for me, it's not even because I had to take my shoes off. I don't care. I love that nobody in front of me has to do it anymore because now I can go through security faster. It's as simple as that. Best news story of the century. Thank you, Donald Trump. Now, like MAGA man, I will vote for you for a third term.
This is one of those crazy things that, because as Golan brought up, one crazy person had shoes with whatever in them for 24 years. We've had to stand on airport lines and take off our shoes. Golan raises the point is, don't people look ahead of them and see other people taking off their shoes? And nobody seems to. It's like the people that go to the quick check out at the supermarket and don't know how to use that machine. And you're like, if you don't know how to use the machine, go to the human. And what are your thoughts on this, Mend?
All right. So first of all, anyone who takes their shoes off and walks barefoot through the airport is just the grossest thing I've ever seen. And you see it all the time. When we get online, we got our kids, we travel a lot, and we are experts, just like Golan. Everything's ready. Shoes are off. Laptops are out. All the kids' iPads are out. Into bins. Boom. We are through in no time and try to get the hell out of there. But you always look out for the one obese person with 700 bags and 30 sandwiches and necklaces and chains and everything that's going to set the alarm bells off. And you go,
I'm
that's
not allowed
not the
to
line.
bring this giant bottle of water through security,
Right.
officer?
That is not the line we're going for. Go behind that other person that looks like they travel a lot and they know what they're doing. As far as the airport, the entire airport security thing is a laughable joke. One is they have machines these days that could see through clothing and you don't have to go through a machine. Like, it's just cameras that are mounted to the ceiling. They could see exactly what's going on. And they also have all the sniffing detecting machines where they could pick up all the plastic explosives. So the fact that they haven't implemented that stuff just makes me think that it's more there as a deterrence. They want to have a visible deterrence to people that are thinking about it. And then it's like the squeezing the balloon effect, where you squeeze it here, it pops up somewhere else, right? So they're squeezing it on the airports so nobody attacks in the airports, but then they're going to go to a stadium and do it there because that's where it's lax. So the whole thing is it's useless. It's pointless. And the other thing is how much crap actually does make it onto planes. I've been on planes where I was like, oh my God, that's in my luggage. I forgot. You get there, you get to the other side and it's there.
I was in the Army. I would travel to visit my family in the United States, and then I would go back into the Middle East, and I would forget that I had not only knives on me, but knives that were illegal in the US, but legal in other countries, switchblades and butterfly knives, things that I would carry in my boot or my side pocket. And only on the plane would I go, oh my God, it's in like my carry-on right now.
Yeah, that's happened to me too, by the way. But go on. I just want to finish this off. You know what Men brought up? It reminded me of, remember in The Line of Fire when Clint Eastwood, they were talking
now I
about
gotta put all that shit back on.
But they were talking about like the need for the Secret Service outside running alongside. And he's like, it would take an anti-tank missile to destroy the limo for the president. And he's like, we're just there for show. And I mean, think about it. That first person you pass as you're getting in that just looks at your pass, what are they there for? You got to show your pass again. I like that point, man. But I want to move on because this story is, again, this is really a big issue. Go on. Because I want to say this to people because this was the whole point, right? You take something like Epstein, it's a stupid story, right? Where everybody now is all of a sudden worried about the victims. They weren't worried about the victims for God knows how many years. But we have so many victims of the left and what they've done to America for the last at least 10 years. And so when you have Biden's doctor pleading the fifth in a speedy closed house door interview, makes you go, what the hell was going on? Where there were zero guardrails.
This is one of the crazier stories, and it doesn't seem like it should be. So what we're talking about, for those of you who aren't aware, Biden's doctor, Kevin O'Connor, while he was in the White House, the current White House, is waiving executive privilege for Biden's doctor. Okay, and why? Because according to everybody, and I'm not going to say that there's a conclusion already to the investigation, but we all have eyeballs, that there was a cover-up about his mental acuity and his mental decline during his presidency. Okay, that's how it started. That was yesterday's headline. And we were like, that's interesting. They're going to do an investigation. Today's headline is that same guy was asked if he lied. And his answer was, I plead the fifth, which is about self-incrimination. Again, I don't know what his reasoning is, and I'm not going to assume, and I'm trying not to play the rumor. I'm trying to only play the fact. He was given permission to say something about the ex-president's health And his response was to basically throw his hands up and say, I think I just gotta not say a word because it's going to make me look bad. I hate it when people do this in TV shows when they're like, I plead the fifth, and they're like, that's proof of guilt. No, pleading the fifth is not proof of guilt, but it sure as hell doesn't make everything look.
Listen, well said. And man, this is a really frightening thing. This is a huge story. I mean, this really is a massive story. It's not just the doctor, it's everything that went on in that White House for 4 years. We have to assume that he wasn't there for at least 4 years, for the whole time.
So off the bat, yes, there was a giant cover up. We all know that. It's blatantly obvious to everybody. The guy would get lost in the bathroom and in his closet, as well as on stage. Everybody saw that. As far as the left and them looking out for the marginalized, the victims, all that victim Olympics thing that they run, the damage that they did to young kids that were sent up from Central and South America into our country, that were trafficked, that were raped, the amount of American kids that were trafficked, raped, and killed and murdered by illegal migrants, that they never bring up. So it's selective outrage and it's utterly bullshit, and we could tune it all out. They've lost the moral high ground. They don't get to talk about victims anymore. They don't get to talk about marginalized or anything. I don't want to hear anything about an innocent illegal alien that was deported because I don't care. It's irrelevant. I care about the American kids that were murdered by the illegal aliens. And if the result of deporting these murderers means that some more or less innocent victims get caught up on it. And when I say innocent victims, they broke the law by coming here, but they were good citizens since they've been here. They get caught up and they get thrown out as well. So be it. Sorry for you. It wouldn't have happened if, like I said before, if these sanctuary cities opened up their jails and let ICE go after the actual criminals. But if they have to do dragnets and just sweep people up, by all means, that is exactly what we voted for. I voted for the safety and security of my kids and grandkids to be. That's what I want. That is what's important. And I don't care about illegal aliens. That is the responsibility of their governments. They need to protect them.
Man, that was perfectly said. And go on to his point. This is really caring about the victims, right? This isn't showboating about our biggest fears with illegal immigrants. We know exactly what many have done. And I hate the argument when people say, well, Americans kill people. Yeah, we get that. Thanks for the update that Americans kill people. But we shouldn't be inviting in more killers and rapists. And
by the way, even the hypocrisy of them saying that, their argument about gun control is, we know people die in a bunch of other ways, but guns are a different animal. This one happened to be with a gun, so now we want gun. It's like, well, that's the same argument you're making. Is we know other people also have killed. It's like, yeah, but we're talking about something specific right now that can be fixed. The fact that they are pushing back against their own argument, except flipped against them, shows you the hypocrisy of the whole thing.
Go on. So last night I was on the phone with a friend, and this goes to Men's point. And I guess the cleaning woman from his building wasn't there for a while, and they for the whole building, and they ended up hiring a black kid, and who's doing a great job. And he's 20 years old and he's working. And obviously it's an anecdotal story, but the narrative always is Americans won't take that job. And now here's a 20-year-old kid who's making $15 an hour, cleaning up a building, maybe going through college, whatever his story is. And yeah, maybe the former cleaning lady did get deported, like Mendy said.
Yeah, I find that whole line of argument to be ludicrous, because it's not like they have gone through all the people who are unemployed, who are actually trying to find work, and saying to them, are you willing to do a job that there's physical labor attached to, or something like that? I know plenty of people who work in construction. I know people who work on farms. I know people who work with their hands on a day-to-day basis. It's something many of them prefer to do because it also gives them some kind of blood flow, physical activity throughout the day. There are plenty of people out there who are willing to do these jobs. And as Men pointed out yesterday, and I think it's an incredibly good point that nobody is talking about, one of the reasons I love the way we discuss things on this show, there are programs in place to allow people to come in as foreign workers legally to do jobs that they are willing to do in order to be able to send money back home, taxed through the United States system, legally through the United States system. By the way, Every country I go to has programs like this. Sometimes it's from just one country, and sometimes it's from multiple countries, but they are often incredibly successful. I was in one country, I don't remember which one it was, but they had Filipinos coming in. And the Filipinos coming in there were day laborers, and they were, yes, house cleaners and nannies and things like that. But there were many of them, and it was a governmental program that allowed them to go through this. And it was a specific amount of time. They got to live in specific kind of housing. It was very well structured. And I saw the same thing in Israel, and I saw the same thing in a lot of different places. So why do we assume that the only way to do this is by hiring illegals? I think it's a ludicrous argument. It's an argument that is dishonest.
It's incredibly racist.
And it's racist.
I mean, let's be honest about that. So I applaud both of you for bringing up exceptional points on this. And again, it's not the easy point to take. The easy point to take is, well, they're working the fields, they're doing this. I get it. We all get that. But let's see if American workers are willing to do that. Remember when Bill Clinton passed that bill where it said where people that are collecting Medicare have to work? Go work. It's an amazing system.
I was born in Arizona. Okay. And if you ever have talked to a roofer who works during an Arizona summer, you know that it's one of the most difficult.
How to do it.
By the way, I bet if the three of us went back into our job history, all three of us have had jobs like this. I worked in what was in Israel called a refit, which is where they store cows, where they hold cows and you milk the cows I had to clean up cow patties. And I worked at a fishery where I was wearing waders and I was going into the water. I mean, we have had some of these quote unquote dirty jobs, right? But if you think about coal miners in West Virginia, fishermen in Alaska, steel workers, construction crews, oil rigs, line cooks, I'm sure I could give 1,000 jobs like this. Americans aren't lazy. It's a patronizing, like you said, racist cop-out dressed up as wisdom, dressed up as an excuse. And I just reject it.
Okay, so but quickly, I'll tell my story. What I want to know your guys' worst jobs, because I was in a halfway house in Mesa, Arizona, and you needed to pay your way, right? So I had to be a day laborer. So I'm standing in line with all the Mexicans praying, don't pick the white man. Please, God, don't pick the white man. Of course, they picked the white man. And let me tell you something, in Mesa, Arizona, 110 degrees, tarring that roof. That was my first horrific job. My second was I was a night cleaning man in Israel at a mentally challenged nursery school at night. Let me tell you, that place was a mess at night. Go on. Worst two jobs, but I did it. Showed up.
We do want to get a farm. So that is actually something I want to do is I want to get a farm and put my kids to work during the summer on a farm. It's really important for kids to have jobs, and it's not to make money. It's to learn the value of money, but it's not to make money. It's to learn how to work. It's learning how to take orders. It's learning how to get things done. And it's learning how to reap the reward of seeing the fruits of your labor. When you complete a task, we have the kids go out and pick weeds or whatever from the yard. When they complete that task, they look back at it and they say, look at the job you did. Look at that. Look how, and they take so much pride in it. It's very important to have that done. Now, in this country, we have millions of people that just sit at home and collect a check, a welfare check or a Medicaid check when they're able-bodied. That is terrible for them. They think they're getting something over on the government and the tax-paying citizens by scamming them and taking a few dollars, but it's actually worse for them themselves. They're not doing the things that actually bring them reward. Most of them are obese, pre-diabetic, if not full-on diabetic. They're on their way out. It's like, my mom used to run social work for the city of New York and Kings County Hospital. And you'd see these patients in there, the same exact mentality, living off of the fat of the land, but not in a good way. They were all in wheelchairs, missing a limb because of diabetes, and they're in the hospital, and they love going there because they get the free healthcare and all of that. But look at you. Look at what happened to you by doing that to yourselves. It is terrible, but they're so caught up in the minutia of getting things covered for them or scamming the hospital out of more pain medicines or any of the other stuff that they don't even have the time to look at what it's done to them and their lives. So this is a great thing.
I think that's an exceptional point. I really do. And I think both of you are incredible parents, and I don't know where they got lost. I mean, it's like all my friends are incredible parents, but obviously you look around, Golan, and it's something you forgot to mention though before when you were talking about what they did in the last 4 years was during COVID, we stilted the growth of a generation. And again, this is a massive story. And I don't know, maybe it doesn't get the clicks. I don't know why it wouldn't. But Golan, having those kids sitting at home was absolute child abuse.
The reason why it's not getting the clicks is, I think it will eventually, is because we haven't seen the results of it yet. This right now is a building thing that we are eventually going to see a collapse happen. Look, I think we are seeing some of it. Don't forget, post-COVID is when we had so many of these young people suddenly become jihadi Antifa terrorists because they had nothing better to do, because they were locked inside, because their brains were melted, because of online classes where parents, suddenly weren't able to monitor, were able to monitor and recognize what was being said. There were so many reasons for this. And I think that we are eventually going to see the collapse. And when that happens, then people are going to, like in a Freakonomics way, rewind the tape and go, where is the point where we went off the rails? And they're going to find it where you're talking about. But something else also occurs to me too in terms of what happened in terms of parenting and children. I keep hearing people talk about like McDonald's workers and the minimum wage and their careers. And what occurs to me is not a lot of these jobs are meant to be lifelong careers for people.
Larry Elder talks about that a lot.
Okay. But I haven't heard it, but I'm sure he's probably going to say something similar to what I'm saying, which is historically, these are transitional roles, which means, by the way, it can be for young people, great, to give them, like Men was talking about, responsibility and discipline and dignity and pride and physical effort and all the rest, but also for legal immigrants or people who are rebuilding their lives, who have come from a place into a new place and are trying to put a foot in the door, a way to earn, to gain structure, whatever. And you were talking about halfway house, people in between paths that are trying to find that like grounding, clarifying experience that's giving them an opportunity to step back up to where they maybe slipped from. These things can be formative, and it can build grit and work ethic and humility and all the rest. And I think that kids don't get that anymore. And I think that's part of what's happening with the younger generation. COVID took that up and basically turned it up to 11. But even before that, I think we were all already on a slippery slope.
Let's put all kids in a halfway house for a summer in Mesa, Arizona.
You joke, but I said every single kid should have military service. And I don't mean going into a combat zone. If you gave every single kid in America 6 months in basic training where they learned about hierarchy, they learned about respect, they learned about taking care of your fellow man, they learned how to take orders, the humility, all of these things that I was just mentioning would apply here as well. I think the world would be a better place all around.
You know, Mend and I were talking about something last night, personal, with a friend of ours. And when I was living in Mesa, Arizona, it was when Joe Arpaio was the sheriff, and America's sheriff. I mean, the guy is just an exceptional, and he's very hated. Arizona's famous for their horseshoe jail where they make you wear pink and rotten bologna, and then you got to go to Tent City. That's where the jail is, in Tent City. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to drive drunk. I don't want to end up in that type of jail. And man, I was thinking, it's like,
you mean it was an actual deterrent?
Yeah, that actually scared the crap out of me. The thought of being in the jail in the middle of the desert. But man, there is something to that. We've lost that too of real deterrence, right? There's no more deterrence. You get out of jail free. We're not letting people hit their bottoms that they need to hit.
Well, that's what happens when you infantilize society. That's what they've been doing. And they've also been looking out for the criminals. So they're sparing the wolf at the expense of the sheep. And that's why you're seeing these repeat offenders on the streets of New York and Portland and Seattle and all these other lunatic places commit crimes again and again and again. And who's getting hurt? Little kids and old women, for the most part. There was a lady set on fire in New York subways. We talked about this, burned to death. And people are back on the train the next day as if nothing happened. And then they in the Democratic primary, they get a guy named Mondomny who thinks that crime is just a made up social construct and that we shouldn't have police. And he wants to get rid of the police and he wants to have social workers go around. My mom was a social worker. That's not going to work. You have people with severe mental illnesses, and granted, the mental institutions were all shut down in the 70s, and now they're on the streets, and these people are, violent criminals, blah, blah, blah. But something should be done about that. But at the same time, if someone commits a crime, you lock them up. Why are you locking them up? Some people say it's to punish them. But more than that, it's to protect the rest of your citizens. You're a herd. They talk about herd protection. Everybody must get vaccinated. They don't use the same exact philosophy when it comes to actually protecting the herd from violent criminals. So you have infantilized a lot of these people. Look at the kids, these protesters. And when I said yesterday they need to get smacked in the head is metaphorically. But
you know what? Can I tell you why it's not? And I don't want to wrap this up, and I want to tell you why it's not. I love my dad more than life, and my dad saved my life. And I don't mind if we get personal on this show. I'm sober almost 27 years. And my dad always used to say, as long as his son was alive, there was a chance. And love my dad. And when I was 6 years old in synagogue, a man went to shake my hand, and men knows how synagogues were. And so do you, Golan. And you know how fathers could be. And a man went to shake my hand, and I didn't stand up. My father smacked the back of my head and said, when a man shakes your hand, you always stand up. Now, some people might say, well, he could have taught it to you differently. Not me. I wouldn't have learned the lesson any other way other than being smacked in the back of the head. That message still resonates with me to this day. Every lesson he taught me he had to teach me in a certain way, I still do. And I'm so grateful.
That's part of the big problem with the lack of parents in the homes. A lot of the places where crime is just rampant, there's a lot of absentee dads. Why is that important? Because when you're growing up, you need to be checked, like you were checked by your dad. You need to be checked. But that is needed. That's how we learn what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. When you don't have that, you have Carnival cruise lines that are just free for alls, people having food fights. And that's like the low hanging, the benign. I saw Philadelphia the other day on 4th of July. There's a Ring camera that caught these, a whole bunch of kids, inner city kids. And there was a full on shootout. 4 of them got killed. Another 12 were shot. But it's all caught on the Ring cam, and you see these kids ducking and they're hiding, and you see someone pop up with a little machine gun and blast a couple of rounds. None of it is like targeted. These guys don't know what they're doing. They're just spraying, which is why so many people always get killed in these mass.
54 shot this weekend in Chicago this past weekend.
In Chicago. Hey, welcome to Chicago. It's doing great. They elected Landon Brad or whatever his name is, that lunatic that they have running the city. He also wants to get
Brandon
Johnson, that guy.
I want to say one more thing about this, because yes, we know already that there are households out there where there's a parent missing or the parents are neglectful. There's a whole new problem that people aren't talking about so much. And those are all the quote unquote cool parents, right? The smug assholes who don't want to tell their kids no. And, they no discipline. And if someone kicks you and you're like, hey, what are you doing kicking me? They're like, hey, don't talk to my kid like that. Let me be the parent here. Where they're physically there, but they're mentally AWOL. This is an epidemic that's happening, and this is a new one. This is no longer the lack of parenting.
Dana White made this statement, and it's so accurate, because you're not going to fix it. You're not going to convince delinquent parents that they need to actually be parents. You're not going to fix. Me and my wife and the kids, we were snowboarding up at Mammoth, and we saw this 14-year-old talking to her dad, just cursing him out. And like a schlub, he was just taking it, following behind her. She's got the latest phone. She's got the latest gear, and she's just cursing. Entitled, terrible, disgusting child. My kids, and Dana White said this, if you raise your kids right, they will do circles around the rest of the kids that are being raised wrong these days. So my kids are jujitsu and Muay Thai, trained. They're not going to take shit, and they have their heads on straight, and they're good. They're actually really friendly, well-grounded, they know who they are. They are rooted and they are loved, and they're going to do circles around these other kids that don't know how to take no. They've never been told no, and they've been given things, and they are just brats now that are going to be adult brats, which is what we're seeing.
I'm curious, men, when your kids started out during jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, were they automatically in, or was it hard and they were a little unhappy that they had to do it, and eventually they grew into being champions?
Yeah, they were not completely in right away. It took some coaxing, but we also told them that it's not an option. So this is something that you're going to do. We're doing it. We all go. And then they made friends there. And it got to the point where my daughter's at 2 different studios now because she has a group of friends that was at the first studio. And then we moved her over to a more professional advanced studio, and she still wants to be with her friends that were there, and they have different fighting styles. So it's actually great. She just won a competition the other day. They're doing great. They are thriving. They're at summer camp right now. We're seeing pictures, the level of confidence you see in their photos, the level of like happiness. This is one of the most important things I could tell any parent today is you cannot let the village raise your child. Everybody says, oh, it takes a village. That village is gone. There is no village anymore. What you have is you have your circle of friends, and then you have to instill the values that are important into your kids, because it used to be that our parents would just let us go to school and the teachers told us, what was right, what was wrong. You can't rely on that anymore. We have woke, indoctrinated teachers that are giving the kids what they think is important, their views on oppressor versus oppressed. I don't want any of that. I want my
And the
kids
reason
to know
they're
right.
able to do that is because these parents that are terrified their kids might not like them. Newsflash, I'm saying this to any listener who has kids. You are not supposed to be your child's friend. You are supposed to be the wall between them and the cliff. And if you're not doing that, you may as well just push them over.
I want to move on, but years ago I did write an article about that. I wrote an article about, I think it was comparing my father with, in a sense, Trump, that the president's job is to be the father of the country. Doesn't have to be liked. He has to be the father of the country and protect all its citizens. And even if that comes at a cost where he's not always popular, he's got to sometimes give a spanking or give bad news or good news. And
This
that's,
guy's doing just that with the Iran thing, with the expelling the illegal alien and locking down these lawless cities, everything. He's doing that. He's not doing the popular thing. The left was doing the popular thing for a long time, which was detrimental to their cities.
Great analogy. And listen, if you're listening to this podcast, obviously we're not like every other podcast. Okay. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. There's two types of writers in a sense, right? And you know this very well. There's writers that just write a story and they don't put themselves into the story. And there are writers that do. I think that's who we are as a show. I mean, you could talk about a news story, but I'm not a reporter and I'm not a journalist. None of us are really at this point, but it's how it relates to us in our lives. And I think that's just what we want to do.
Yeah, and I think the three of us come at it from different perspectives, even though we do share some values. We all have had different experiences. We all have different backgrounds. Even the fact that you don't have kids and we have kids, and the ages of my kids are younger than men's kids. Like we all have a different world that we're living in right now. But I think that conversation is important because the more people listen to these different perspectives of people who, I say with as much humility as I can muster, are living a good life. They're doing it right. Their kids are doing great. Their career is going well. They're happy. They're healthy. They're in good shape. All the stuff you want out of life. If you are going to listen to people talk about it, listen to those people. Don't listen to the obese, chunky, whatever his name is, over on Young Turk. Don't listen to Alex Jones, who looks like he's going to sweat himself into a coma. Listen to people who are doing it right, and maybe you'll absorb a little of that. And if not, maybe you will get a perspective you haven't heard before, and it'll give you a new idea on what to do next.
Isn't that interesting, though? It's like they lend nothing of themselves to their audience. They don't. They lend nothing of themselves. And I find that remarkably sad that people are drawn into something where people aren't offering up something of themselves. And because that's a relationship. And if you listen, I love radio. I love I love that. But you have to, even Hannity, about Hannity, you know what I mean? Or about Levin, he'll share personal stuff. And I just think it brings the audience in. I want to move on, though, to our favorite Jewish lover, Roger Waters, who faces prosecution for supporting a banned, this is in the UK, a banned Palestinian Action group, Golan. And this is the same guy who wore a Nazi uniform when he performed in Germany. And people say, how does this start? Well, this is how it starts, when this becomes acceptable behavior.
This guy, I will admit, I have hated this dude for a very long time. I have very good reason to do so. And let's just go ahead and put it aside. This isn't about silencing criticism of Israel. It's about endorsing illegal actions by a group that admitted to breaking into a military base that are deemed a terrorist group. Waters isn't a human rights hero. He presents himself as such. And I don't like Piers Morgan very much, but I will never forget watching Roger Waters on Piers Morgan, where he started talking to himself and kind of slipping the mask off of how nuts this dude is. Like you said, Nazi style uniforms at concerts, always calling out the Jewish lobby, always,
Having the Star of David on a ball, being bounced around at the concerts and people slamming it down.
And everything he does is about this. When you have made something that has to do with hate your entire identity, you know you are the cesspool of humanity. And this guy, even his fellow bandmates who have made countless money off of his back, recognize that he's a giant piece of shit and can't wait for him to disappear from the planet, God willing, soon.
Okay, I have to stand up for David Gilmour because I was always a Gilmour guy. I wasn't a Waters guy. And Division Bell, great album. You know, so let's not knock on.
No, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying they recognize that Waters is a trash fire. And that they even said at some point there was a moment, it didn't quite
It was
happen.
Gilmour's wife that went after him.
That's right. But they were going to get together and they were going to perform without Waters. And then there was a whole lawsuit behind it. But I know the guy who was going to finance it was putting it together. So, I mean, these guys don't like him either, and they're public about it.
Look, I am a big Pink Floyd fan. I love that group forever. But Roger Waters is a demented person. The guy is absolutely insane. He's sliding down that slippery slope, which every single one of these people do. It starts out with some sort of social justice, and then it comes out with something about the marginalized people of Palestine. And the next thing you know, they are full on calling for the execution of Jews everywhere, but not Jews, Zionists. So same thing. So screw him. I hope they do throw the book at him. You just look at him. The man is miserable and demented, like they all are. They get carried away. You know, I just say this really quickly. I saw this guy in the UK interviewing people on some sort of pro-Hamas rally, and he asked about, and they were, gay or whatever, trans something. And he said, do you know about this and this person? He named an Arab kid who fled to Israel to seek protection because he came out as gay and his family wanted to kill him. And eventually he got lured back to Bethlehem and they chopped his head off. And he goes, do you know about this person? And they couldn't not answer, none of that. They just started screaming at him. They are lunatics. And when you show evidence that disputes their narrative, they can't take that, which is why guys like Charlie Kirk do so well in these open air debates, because he shows how empty their arguments are. There's nothing there of substance. So,
and moving on though, because I think this is, I don't know how this happens. Maybe you can explain it, Mend. But this Elon Musk and the Grok chat box thing with the anti-Semitic post, this has got to be more than a glitch to the system. I don't understand this.
Well, I'm going to just say something very simple, is that these AI models are based on large language. They suck up content from all over the internet, and then they have the models learn on how people usually interact and what the outcomes usually are. There's a ton of anti-Semitic information on the net. So if you're just hoovering up all that info, you're going to get a lot of that. And then the other thing is the guys that were programming this thing generally were very left-leaning. And Elon, not too long ago, I think it was within the last month, said, we are going to make Grok less woke. What does that mean? That means they're going to remove some of the safeguards that the people on the left put in because it was giving too much of a left-leaning narrative. And it looks like they got rid of too many of these safeguards because it went all the way over, racist, anti-Semitic, Hitler praising, Psychoville, and they need to fix that. It's a hard challenge because if you're taking in that much data, how do you figure out, how do you weed it out? And I'm not a scientist that can do that, but they need to get a grip on that. And I'm just going to say one more thing is that if you're going to rely on these AI chatbots to give you good information, you need good information coming out of it. So they say bad data in, bad data out. It looks like we're having a case of that where there's bad data gone in and there's bad data coming out.
But go on, before you get to it, it always seems, I think Alexa had the same issue. This seems to be an issue just with Jews. Because to Men's point, if you're compiling a bunch of data, right, even if it's by the left, How come it's specifically picking out one group?
Well, the thing is, it wasn't. It wasn't just picking on one group. That's some of the crazier stuff that was said. But it basically was racist across the board. Everything was conspiracy theories and extremism and all the rest. And let me start with how this happened. Okay. So Elon Musk has a company. The AI company is called XAI, right? That's what trained Grok. So it's trained, and this will sound like a joke. It's trained partially via conversations on X, the cesspool of the universe. All right, so right away we know that there's a problem, because that means that anyone who is posting on X, anything that is being posted is at least part of the conversation. Now, as Men pointed out, there were guardrails. Okay, this crazy stuff over here, ignore that. This one, don't amplify. This one, amplify. This one's rated this amount. This person has a trust factor, et cetera, et cetera. Because Elon Musk was trying to do a no woke zone, what he did was he basically told the guardrails, turn off. Imagine Jurassic Park when they turned off the electricity. That's all it is
Great
basically it
analogy.
means
Great
that
analogy.
for months, this artificial brain just absorbed, unchecked, unfiltered, algorithmically boosted extremism and conspiracy theories and racism and anti-Jewish sentiment and everything else you could possibly imagine into this massive amalgamation of zero sanitized garbage. Okay, so now when you think about AI, it's bad enough that those who curate their training data, they still have a major problem, by the way, because those who curate it, as Men pointed out, and this is incredibly important for everyone to hear, we've talked about this on other episodes. AI it's just scraping the internet, and it depends on who the programmers say, when you scrape this, take it more seriously, and when you scrape this, take it less seriously, which is how you end up right now with ChatGPT rating The Guardian and Al Jazeera a 10 out of 10 for information about Palestine, Gaza, Israel, where the Jerusalem Post and the Times of Israel both get a lower rating. Why? Because that's whoever decided to hit those buttons when they were programming that particular AI decided to do it. So when you get your information on ChatGPT, it is fed through that algorithm. So that's bad enough. But now imagine if it's just purely raw content. If you feed a machine anger and hate and lies, it doesn't become honest. It becomes efficient at repeating all of that swill. And that's what's happening here. So yes, we can talk about how Musk saved free speech by buying X, and we can talk about his work with Doge, and we can talk about his recent meltdown and all the rest. But ultimately, we do have to look back, like I always talk about, like in a Freakonomics way, look back all the way at the beginning in late 2022 when he fired basically everybody in the trust and safety staff of X. Now that made it a free for all. And then there were community notes. I've talked about how I don't trust community notes because it's a popularity contest and every minority can get beat up by anyone who wants to beat them up. But if you don't have trust and safety staff, and that group is also part of curating the data or training the AI, and now guardrails are removed, basically you're just getting a hate speech enforcer. And that's where we are.
So let's stop for a second. One is the trust and safety apparatus at X was a left-leaning, conservative silencing organization. That is what they did. So it needed to get rid of. They needed to get rid of that.
But that doesn't mean that zero trust and safety staff is better in terms of training an AI model. That's my
in terms of training. Definitely, there are challenges there, but that trust and safety apparatus was a First Amendment just silencing machine, and it was very selective and it was very left leaning. And X became the only place that didn't have it. Every single other platform had that installed, and it was a consortium, and they were actively silencing not just people on these platforms, but then they had the ad boycott regimen where they were boycotting the companies that were buying ads on places like Daily Wire or any conservative leaning platform. So this was the most dangerous thing, right? It was the most dangerous thing. And then if you're going to say X, right, they got rid of it. They put their community notes in, not perfect, but definitely better than what was there before. I just saw today that Wikipedia has their whole entry for what Zionism is. Have you seen this?
I'm part of a task force about this. So yeah, you want to talk about this? This is an even more insane story, by the way, than Grok. Grok just has the potential to be even more dangerous in the future. But Wikipedia right now is infiltrated in ways you've never seen. Honest reporting is an organization that kind of holds media accountable, and
A great
they did a
org.
whole report about this. I'm actually part of a task force that is working to try and root out the people who are in Wikipedia. This is basically like Hamas infiltrated Israel on October 7th. Hamas infiltrated, and Iran and China and Russia infiltrated Wikipedia in the same way. And you can actually look at the reports, but you can even go in and see the number of edits that are made to any entry that could potentially make a terrorist organization look bad or innocents look good. It's a mind-boggling operation that they were able to pull off up until now.
Yeah, I mean they in Wikipedia right now under Zionism, it says it's a ethno-cultural nationalist movement that emerged in the 19th century in Europe to establish and maintain a Jewish homeland through the colonization of Palestine, a region corresponding to the land of Israel and Judaism and central to the Jewish history. Zionists wanted to create a Jewish state in Palestine with as much land and as many Jews as possible and as few Palestinians. So that's, I mean, this is not X. This is not an AI chatbot. That problem is not exclusive to Elon Musk. It's not exclusive to him getting rid of the content moderators. This is a big problem of just blatant Jew hate on the internet.
These things are connected, though. I want to talk about why they're connected. Because one of the major sources that AI uses for its information is Wikipedia. Okay, so they already have infiltrated a source, and now this, I'm sure you've heard of this, right? In AI, all of them has a thing called hallucinations, right? When AI hallucinates, it'll sometimes give you false information, and you don't know what's false and what's not until you look at the research or whatever it is, right? So if you're not aware, it can give you stuff, and then later you're like, it's 100% making that up whole cloth, and when you call it out, it'll say to you, you're right to call me out. You got me. I made that part up. And it's shocking. So those are called hallucinations. When it is pulling information from a place like Wikipedia or a place like X with no guardrails, the hallucinations, and this is actually the term that's used, become hallucinations of hate, which means bias amplification, which means misinformation recursion. This is from a 2023 study done in MIT and Stanford and the Allen Institute. And they saw this coming. And they said, if you don't put the guardrails back up, this is going to become a problem for Grok. And because it's not filtering out anything. And sure enough, Grok didn't stop itself. It didn't generate these anti-Semitic statements by accident. It generated them repeatedly. And one last thing I'll say, I know I'm going on too long about this, but this is such an important issue in today's world. Grok was deliberately designed to be the anti-establishment chatbot. They called it snarky. They called it rebellious. They literally said, we want this to be the provocative, cool version of AI, like a digital teenager. So when you already have that idea of it being snarky and rebellious and provocative, and then you add on top of that shock value, all the other stuff we just talked about, this is what comes out. It calls itself Mecha Hitler. That's where we are today.
Well said, both of you. And I am glad for one thing today, that Elon Musk is not at the White House anymore. Can you imagine the crap storm that they would be facing right now if Elon Musk was working at the White House? Talk about damage control. This would be so damaging, Golan, and so damaging, man.
It's a great point.
Thank you. Which probably will be the title of the episode.
They're gonna tie it to Trump anyway. It doesn't matter.
No. They could try to do that to Trump, but the fact that he's no longer in the actual White House, and there being pictures of him throwing up his kid or whatever, whoever's kid, it's a good day for Elon Musk not to be at the White House. And it's also an important reminder. We do this so often. We really do. We want to be the cool kids sometimes, and we do this and we accept people into our party that and I brought this up, that we haven't always vetted. And it's okay to not be cool. We're winning. We don't need to invite everybody in just because they want to be in Golan. And we've learned lessons the harsh way. I was going to say, who wrote that Wikipedia post? Candace Owens? It literally sounds like, if I thought she could write, it sounds like an entry into Wikipedia that she would make. Okay, on that note, I want to thank you both. I really got a lot out of this episode, and I hope others do too. I mean, cover the news, you share the stories, and you get a little personally involved. I can't think of a better thing to listen to sometimes. And I didn't even tell the story of meeting John Voight this morning. So there you are. I guess we'll have to save that for tomorrow. I met John Voight this morning. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading us on Apple, Spotify. You find us there both on the Daily Cheat Sheet, but also go to Substack, Daily Cheat Sheet, YouTube Daily Cheat Sheet, Instagram Daily Cheat Sheet, Truth Daily Cheat Sheet, or my personal account, or Golan's personal account, and of course on X, TD Cheat Sheet. Promise no grokking on our page. Got myself to laugh. Okay, I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world wherever you are. God bless you all.